Hello, stage of Java. Welcome to Exploring Quarkus with Java 17. I am very happy to be here today with you. I'm Anna. I'm a Java champion and certified architect, currently working as a developer advocate for Red Hat. I'm looking forward to your feedback, your questions about this session, about what I'm showing you today, and many more. As I'm a passionate person about scenarios that involve Java frameworks, multiple cloud providers, or Kubernetes and OpenShift. You can find out more about what I'm doing, what I'm writing, at what events I'm participating at by following me on Twitter at Umbra1508. What we'll discuss today, we'll discuss what is Quarkus, how does that help us as Java developers. We're going to look at the demo, obviously, with Quarkus in Java 17. And I am looking forward to your questions so that I can answer them at the end. So what is Quarkus? Well, Quarkus, its name starts from quark, which means elementary particle, and us, which are the most important, I think, when it comes to working with frameworks or anything in computer science. There are some differentiators that make Quarkus a great framework, such as the fact that you can tailor your app regardless if you want to work natively, so Java native, or working with Hotspot. It has fast boot time and a low memory footprint, regardless of what you're choosing, as regardless if you're choosing Hotspot or GraalVM. It can even work with serverless, and it's serverless fit because of this fast boot time and low memory footprint. It also brings developer joy because it has live reloading, so whenever you're coding something, your application is live reloading. It has unified configuration. You can have continuous testing done for you, meaning whenever you're changing something at your application code, your tests can be evaluated and seen if they should be also affected by that change. Then you have dev services for sometimes a zero setup of things like databases. It unifies also the idea of coding reactive and imperative. So you have this option now, and of course integrates with a lot of libraries, and it follows and it respects a lot of standards. So the first benefit that I want to bring to your attention with Quarkus is that it's thought container first. And that's given by three factors. Well, the reduced memory footprint, and the fast startup time, and then the smaller disk footprint. So thanks to the reduced memory footprint and the fast startup time, you get an application that doesn't consume so many resources. It doesn't need a lot to be started up or to be gracefully shut it down. And that makes it amazing for fitting it inside a container. Moreover, the next benefit is about well, being happy when you're coding with it, because that's very important to feel happy when you're working with a framework. And live coding was one of the first features that brought a lot of developer joy. Moreover than this, continuous testing and dev services that were introduced starting with Quarkus 2 are bringing even more developer joy, because I'm sure you all wanted for a long time, like, to have a feedback that some tests need to be changed once you've changed the code, and not do every time the entire testing part and wait a lot of time to get the results. You need a faster feedback. And then the dev services will no longer, focusing on configuring local setups that were complex and so on. So that is being spun up for you. The third benefit of using reactive and imperative ways of programming. So you can use the technology that fits your needs. And reactive programming, did not forget about it. The key for reactive system is based on event-driven apps. So now you have the options on how to build those too. The benefit number 4, well, the Quarkus universe, which is so big. It has a lot of frameworks that can integrate with. There are a lot of standards that were taken into account for each extension available there. And thanks to the extensions, you can add only what each of your microservice needs. So no more boilerplated code that probably you might not need. To give you some numbers in time, the Quarkus native, Quarkus Plus native version, it needs like 16 seconds, 16 milliseconds to start, and Quarkus of JVM takes like almost 1 second for the app to start. While a traditional cloud native stack, well, it needs like at least 4 seconds to start. Now, if you like add some more complexity to your app, like create, read, update, and delete operations, you'll probably see that it needs a few extra milliseconds for the native Quarkus app to start, but still it doesn't get to the 9.5 that traditional cloud native stack would. Now, there are some numbers regarding the memory. As you can see, the Quarkus native has the smallest number. While going with the JVM, it adds some more megabytes, but looking back to the traditional cloud native stack, it's still less. By the way, these tests were done on a single core machine. And if you're like adding create, read, update, delete operations similarly to the time needed to start, you can see an increase in those numbers as well. So now that you have these numbers about the memory, you can see some, testimonials that are available on the Red Hat blog about the fact that you could run 3 times tensor deployments without sacrificing any of the availability and response time of the services. So this is how nice it is to have an application that is small and that is fast. It starts fast. Moreover, you can use the compiler of choice. So you can either use GraalVM or OpenJDK, whatever is that you're used to, or whatever that you like most to use. So do not forget that, Quarkus is using ahead of time compilation. So this means that is optimized to like look into what is used from the code. Maybe you forgot some dependencies, or maybe you forgot some classes that you're no longer using them for some features, and that's not packaged in your runnable Java app, so that you don't end up with useless code in your container and just grow it unnecessarily. And since we talked already about the Quarkus extensions, here are some Quarkus extensions we're going to use today. Also REST-easy, we're going to use the microprofile open API, and some others. So the Quarkus extension universe is growing and is expanding, and to give you even more goodness when it comes to working with a framework. Quarkus loves Kubernetes, and probably you already guessed why, because, well, a small containerized application that starts fast, that's love, that's a match. So this means that Quarkus is tailored for microservices, even for serverless loads, for building event-driven architectures, all these being supported by Kubernetes, and then Istio and Knative. So it's a match. Those being said, let's look into the demo of exploring Quarkus with Java17. And the first place we're going to start with is code.quarkus.io. So let's go to code.quarkus.io and choose here to build our application. So probably you're wondering what we're going to build. Well, I have here the board API, and I want to build a hobby application that is consuming information from the board API, and then it exposes those informations according some needs that I will invent down the road to some end users. And again, this is going to expose a REST API. So let's go here and make our app. Red Hat.developers. It's here, let's just say sample app, and choose what we need. We need to consume things, so we might need a REST client. We need to make our own REST API. So I'm going to use REST-easy with JSON-B serialization. What else do I need? Well, I would like to also observe how my API is evolving. So I need I need Open API that comes with Swagger UI so that I can interact with my API. I would also like to make my application fault tolerant, make it resilient. So I'll add the small I fault tolerance extension as well. And I would also like to make a container image then build it and push it, and I can do that with the Jib extension. So these 5 for the moment to generate my app. Then I can download it and work with it, or you can even push it to your GitHub account. Now let's go to the IDE and let's clear this one and get here. So I already have my resource. It's called hobby resource. And I'm going to show you how this was generated, because there is a command that can generate this for you. And let's see. Okay, let's start with Java17. Make sure that I have Java17 and yes, it's in my pom.xml. And say ambient Quarkus dev and start my app and see how it's behaving. And also look at the startup time of the app, because we were actually wondering how much time it will take to start. So the profile is activated. Okay, started in almost 2 seconds. So cool. Now let's go to localhost. And yes, look at the actions. So yes, it's responding with hello rest easy. I'm going to dev UI. Look at this one. And I have my small open API here where I can work with. So I can also see my app there as well. Good. Now that we've done this, let's code for our board API. And let's first look at this random endpoint, copy this, and create some data transfer objects so that we can consume the API. So we're first going to make a basic hobby with this information, make it bigger, and comment this part. Okay, and we're going to make this basic hobby and say public string key, public string activity, public string type, public int participants. I believe this is like a basic information that you can get about this about hobbies, about activities. And then we need to use the GSMB creator, like public basic hobby, and say public static basic hobby, and call this method empty and return new basic hobby. Cool. But I want to make like an hierarchy of DTOs so that I can use the DTO per need for the resource that I'm implementing there. So what I can do, I can say that this is a sealed class that will allow inheritance only to another class that's called priced hobby. And this way I'm like, strengthening the API that I'm building. So I'm just putting what I need. Priced hobby, well, I'm gonna copy paste this. As you might imagine, it has public string, not string, but a double, because price is a double price. And again, a JSON creator. And here we need like to say public static priced hobby empty and return priced hobby. And now this class has a problem, meaning it needs to be defined as either as final, sealed, or non-sealed. And we're going to build another hobby. So we're going to say this is a sealed class that permits, of course, inheritance only to complete hobby, which is another class, and will contain the other details from here. And this complete hobby, we're going to create it as well. Let's make this bigger and paste it here. Stands the priced hobby. And here, this one, we're going to say that's non-sealed. What do I need next? Okay, the link, public string link, and public double accessibility, which I actually am going to copy paste from here. And again, a JSON creator, public complete hobby, empty, return new complete hobby, and this one has a step in front of it. So now we have some really nice DTOs. Cool. We've created our class hierarchy. Now let's implement the endpoint, the part where we're going to consume this endpoint. And with Quarkus, we just need to make a REST, register REST client, which can be an interface. So we're going to call it activity service. And we're going to say at register REST client at path. And here I need a path. And yes. Cool. Now that we've done this, let's look again to the board API. And this is our path. Now, instead of coding this here, we can do this. Take this part and leave just the API activity there. And complete this part in application.properties and have it here. Okay. In live reload things. Now that we have the activity service, we just need to add the connection between the two, which is com.redhat.com activity service mp minus rest URL. So I'm going to have my configuration here. It says here that, oh yes, I don't have any methods, so I need some methods here. First one that I'm going to get, the random one. And then I want another one for type. Okay. And then one for accessibility. So I'm going to code with these three. First one that I want to code is the recreational one, the activity by type. So we're going to do a get that produces. And here I'm going to go to hobby resource and get this because I have sometimes issues with importing this class and say media type dot application.json. And while looking at this, I need to do like public. I need to think about how I'm going to assume this a little bit. So don't need public. I need just basic hobby get activity by type. And we need a query parameter here, which is type string type. And we're done. Now the next one that we're having is the generic one, the random. Oh, sorry. Not this. Okay, so this one is get random. It doesn't need any parameter. And let's, for the sake of fun of it, let's make a priced hobby. And the last one that we need is one with the accessibility. And the accessibility, actually, it's present only in the complete hobby. So this one, I'm gonna copy paste this to speed up things for me, but okay. But here, I'm going to return a complete hobby because only complete hobbies have the accessibility. So let's replace it. And then have it here again and again. So now we have three endpoints that are there available. Let's use them here at inject, at REST client, activity service, service. Okay, now here we're going to return a JSON. And we're going to say service, get random. And this one returns a basic hobby. So now warriors, things were reloaded. Let's go and check the browser. Let's check for the actions. Look, we got an activity. All things are fine, but we see here that tests were paused. So I am pressing R to start my test. And, you know, tests are being run right now, especially the one that I have already. And test is failing. And it tells me that I haven't changed the test for my endpoint. So I need to change this one to not null value so that I'm fixing my test. The reason because doing this because I'm invoking a random endpoint, and that random endpoint might return whatever it needs. So now my application is running as expected and is tested good. Let's complicate a little bit the implementation about our exposed API and make another endpoint as follows, because we can choose what we want to implement. The return OK if the activity type is recreation. Next, what else do I want? I want to return, well, no content if the activity type is type drawing, because this one is not implemented in the board API. For the rest of activities implemented by board API, return, what else can I return? I don't want to return things to users, even though they're implemented. Return not implemented, because I didn't provide implementation in this, in my app. For the rest of activities, we're going to copy paste this one. Not implemented by board API. It's going to say not available. Okay. Return service not available. Okay, so let's implement these things and go firstly with get. Put a path for our service where we can put the type, because we actually are returning things by type. And it produces, this is actually media type dot application.json, and say public, what kind of thing I want. Well, looking at this, I cannot return one of the DTOs anymore because I return different type of contents. So I need to use response and say get hobby by type, and of course import this class. And here at path from by type and string type. Now I'm going to do something with Java 17 that I like as a new feature, and I'm going to use to return by using a switch. So return by type, and put the else here, and implement my cases. Case activity type is recreational. Case recreational. Now I'm not going to use this anymore. I don't remember this. We used to make a lot of mistakes when we had cases, like forgetting breaks and so on. So now with no more problem, we can do this type matching by using this arrow and put the status and say response dot status dot OK, and then build the entity from requesting to the service to get this activity by type, and then build the response. Good. Next case is drawing. Okay, drawing is not implemented, right? So this one will return status of response dot status dot not implemented dot build. So I don't want to return anything. Now default case. And probably going to ask, but why don't you do another case for the others? So here it says for the rest of activities. So we don't know all the types involved, and we should we could avoid doing a very long case situation. So we can do this like default. In the only endpoint that is existing right now for the board API is like getting activities by a certain type or by certain features. You cannot see if they really exist. So what we're going to do is do basic hobby and ask for hobby. and say service.getActivityByType type. And in this case, what we're going to do, so if the hobby.participants has participants, I mean, if it's implemented, has participants, that's the thing. And in this case, you can return a response.status. So it's not implemented. Response.status not implemented. .build. Otherwise, return response.status response status .service unavailable .build. And what we can do this, put everything in this, and precede it with the yield keyword. So what yield does, it will evaluate and short circuit this for your implementation. So this is how you can like do this shorter. Now let's go to the browser and go to the Open API and try out our API. So first of all, recreational execute. So now we get something for recreation. We get 200. Growing. For this one, I expect to receive the no content. Sorry. So no, not implemented. But I have it here. One moment. Okay, sorry about this. Response.status. Okay, now it's fine. Next one, let's go for the default cooking, which is implemented. It says not implemented because we didn't want to implement it. And if you put cookings, which doesn't exist in the API, it's 503. And you can check on me by trying it out and go back to the board API and say type cooking. Cooking exists. I submitted it. If I put cookings, no activity found with specified parameters. Great. So now we have a nice API implemented and all is good. However, mistakes happen. And for example, I'm going here. If I'm going to add an S, the board APIs.com. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't exist. So what this means is that, well, tests will fail. Users that will go here and will do an invocation to the actions to get a random action. They will get an error, which is ugly, which is not nice to see by an end user. So what options are there? Well, we can make this API here full by doing the following. Using that circuit breaker annotation from microprofile and have implemented here like failure ratio of 0.75. So if 75% of the requests are failing, try to open the circuit like every 3 seconds. Maybe things are getting bad. I'm trying to close the circuit every 3 seconds and keep it half open, and maybe things will be better. But if not, also be mindful of how much time it will take for that request to execute and annotate with a timeout using 150 milliseconds. So if in 150 milliseconds you don't get anything, well, throw an exception, or maybe retry again and do it like max retries of 4 times at a delay of 500 milliseconds and see if maybe the API is working. But if it's not going to work, like it's the case of here, because, well, it's not going to work, you can add default, pull back to a default basic hobby. And this here, you can like provide some kind of like some of information or response before you properly implement something that is going to replace this behavior when the endpoint is not available. And normally you do have an inner class which was static and so on, but now you can use records with Java 17 and have the basic hobby here, and well, implement this, handle the execution, and return new basic hobby. It's not new basic hobby, sorry, basic hobby.empty, because new basic hobby doesn't work in this context, and is now okay. So this is for the basic hobby part. Now we can do the same for the random. So instead of basic hobby, you can say here default priced hobby, and created an inner class here, and have it as a record. Here. This is where all those empty methods will be used. So yes, implement method, return priced hobby of empty, and yes, now the table, you can see here that the tests are running, things are pausing, and let's execute first this one, the actions. This is great, this is amazing. And let's execute also the second one by type, and try it here, recreational. Okay, it's not going to be the real API, but the list is going to return the 200 with the participants. So this is a great improvement from like returning that ugly exception, which is not very friendly and nice. Okay, so we've been looking right now at like building an app and so on, but how about making this app available for like being packaged for going native? So we're going to use Jib to not use to do the normal Docker commands. And with Jib, you can do this, like have a base native image to build your native executable, and we're going to use this one. But for example, you can also use another thing with Jib. You can also have the JVM base image change. So Jib allows you to play with these configurations so that you can change the base and get even smaller images. I'm gonna compile and build, and then build the container image, everything natively. So this is my goal. Now the next thing I'm going to do is have my Quake configuration, and I don't think I want to do this. I don't want to do this yet. I want to keep just my image registry and my image group, and have the Quarkus container image dot tag saying native 3.0, for example. And I can also do this Quarkus dot container image dot push true. So this is going to say to Quarkus like, hey, when you're building and packaging my app, also push this. And next, I'm just going to go and here and build my image. So this is going to compile to native, package everything, build my container image, and then push it to my registry. Now let's do this. While we're waiting for this, let's add some more extensions to our configuration. So one other extension that is really nice to have is the help extension. Why is this nice to have? Well, it is nice to have because it's good to, I'll copy the command to add this one, to like monitor how healthy is your app. So let's add this here. But I wouldn't do that when I was building my my app. And I think I already added it if I'm looking to my configurations. So let me see. Oh yes, I already have it. But if you don't have it, what you can do in the command line, you can do this, and you are adding it instantaneously. Similar, there is another extension for generating Kubernetes objects at compile time. And this is the Quarkus minus Kubernetes. So this generates Kubernetes objects at compile time. And if you're like interested in where they are generated, they're generated under /target Kubernetes, Kubernetes.yaml. So you can use them both. And you see here that if you're like not giving any details of like what type of service would you like to build, it's going to be cluster IP. If you're doing this and your context is reloading, you are going to see that some things are changing, like service type will be load balancer, as you configured in the application properties. Now, this is a great feature, like always, like defining things that are more nearer to the developers and not necessarily looking for, building all of these objects from scratch. Also, the generated objects take into account where the liveness and readiness are. So, for example, the liveness is here. The readiness is at this endpoint. I think I didn't invoke it correctly. Oh, yes, it's ready to have ready. So all these things are being generated on demand when you need them, as per your needs. And as just by simply adding extensions, your app is looking into these and it takes them into account and builds them. So now that things were built, I think the container was pushed. And yes, you can see here native 3, 55 megabytes. So I have it there available. And what else I can do is I can deploy this resulted Kubernetes objects. And I can do this, I think, even in the sandbox, if I'm launching my own sandbox. Just give me a second. Yes, I'm going to my sandbox. And here I can go to on the plus and I can put my YAML. Okay, so let me push it. And you can see here that is importing these resources. You can see here that's a service, that's a deployment. So they were successfully deployed and available here. So all is looking nice, and you can also see the topology of your app if you're like looking into it. And because you're like using this lovely environment, you can also create a route. So sample, okay, and select a service, which is sample app, target port is 80, and have it available here. So it takes a little while for it to be available, but it will be up and running and spent for you. So this is how easy it is to work with Java 17 with Quarkus and have things built in like seconds for you. And all started with code.quarkus.io. If you're like looking for a place where you can find the code, where you can find the explanations of what I shared to you today, again, but in written, there is an article that I wrote in December. It's about about exploring the language features of Java 17 with Quarkus. You can please scan it. I'm going to leave this for a while here so that you can scan it properly and have access to it. So please don't be shy. And I hope that I'm going to receive some comments or some questions from your side in the chat, and tell me how easy do you find working with Java 17? How easy do you find working with Quarkus? I'm looking forward to hearing those from you. And of course, like always, there are some additional resources because, well, you saw me probably coding very nicely and using some resources. What I want to share with you is that you can get more content on how to use develop Red Hat products and more content in regarding working with Quarkus or with Kubernetes or with OpenShift and all these goodness by signing up to developers.redhat.com. And once you sign up to developers.redhat.com, you can instantaneously start your own developer sandbox for Red Hat OpenShift. I personally use that one for like instead of like using a local. I believe that that one is easier, like no more configurations on my local. I'm just pushing there and everything's fine. Or I can just, copy paste YAML and have my application running like I did earlier. And do not forget that you can learn more about Quarkus. You can learn more about cloud native applications by reading this awesome book that my colleagues Natalia Vinto and Marcus Isele have written. It's about modernizing enterprise Java. It's very easy to be read. It's very nice, and by the way, it has a very useful Java repository that you can get information from, and that you can utilize the code later on. Moreover, I want to thank you, and I am looking forward to seeing your question in the chat, seeing if you like the presentation, if there's something that you would have expected more to see in the presentation today, maybe you can ask me, and I can give you more information about that particular aspect. So any of these things, I am welcoming them. And if you don't have any questions and you would like to attend any other session, well, for those of you that like to leave, hope to see you soon in person someday. And yes, enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye.